Question. Kim, I wonder what is at the heart of all conspiracies. The content of them changes Question. Kim, I wonder what is at the heart of all conspiracies. The content of them changes while the idea that there is some very big, very well hidden secret and everyone is in on it persists all across the board. Do you have experience with this sort of ideas? Well, big topic, but let me try and give some clear pointers about it. First of all, if you want to understand conspiracies, you have to watch my video about how the world was created, because it talks about it in there that there were some beings that rebelled against the process of growth and self-transcendence, and they are now seeking to control us. And so there are these beings, I call them fallen beings, that are on Earth. Some of them are in physical embodiment, some of them are in the emotional, mental, and identity realms. And they are deliberately seeking to control people and confuse people. One of the ways you control people is to first confuse them so they don't know what to believe, and then tell them, here's the absolute truth. And if you want to understand conspiracies, you can say that the original conspiracy are these fallen beings who are seeking to control humanity. But what you also need to understand is that they cannot form a absolutely unified conspiracy, because they are trapped in what I call the duality consciousness, where there are always two opposite polarities. So that means they can never be fully unified. There will always be at least two fallen beings who each of them want to be the top dog, and therefore they're always fighting against each other. So there's always a certain division in it. But this doesn't mean, of course, that there aren't these beings, some of them are not in embodiment and some of them are, who are seeking to create some kind of secret conspiracy to control people. That has happened many times throughout history. But so we can talk about there is an actual conspiracy in the sense that there are these fallen beings who are seeking to control us. But then, of course, comes the concept of conspiracy theories. And when a person is saying that the content of them changes while the idea that there's some very big hidden secret persists, well, that's because the idea that there's a big secret, yeah, that's the conspiracy. But the conspiracy theories take many different forms. So they present this in many different ways. And in a sense, you could say that the original conspiracy is the existence of these fallen beings who are deliberately, maliciously, and deceptively trying to control humanity. This is the original conspiracy. But what has happened is that these fallen beings, for a very, very long time on Earth, they were trying to hide their existence. And they were successful for a long time. But in the modern age, it's becoming harder and harder for them to hide. A big blow to them was the invention of the printing press, so that books could be spread. But of course, the internet was an even bigger blow. So what has happened is that there are more and more people who have begun to understand that something is going on behind the scenes. So there's something hidden happening on Earth. That they look at world events, they even look at, for example, democracy, and they are saying that here we have a new form of government that supposedly the people are making the important decisions in life. But we see that there are things happening that are not in the interest of the people, so how can this be? This means there must be some hidden power elite that are trying to control things behind the scenes. More and more people are seeing this. And in the last 100 years, more and more people have begun to see that there is this manipulation behind the scenes. And this means that the fallen beings are now, they're realizing that it's become more difficult for them to hide their existence. So what are they trying to do? Well, they're trying to do what they always do, confuse people by creating all of these conspiracy theories. And most of these conspiracy theories out there are fake. They are created by the fallen beings, often by inspiring people in physical embodiment, taking over their minds, but they are created by the fallen beings to confuse the whole issue, to basically create so many outrageous, crazy theories that people are giving up on the whole thing. You'll just see how many people don't even want to touch anything that sounds like a conspiracy, because they immediately label it as a conspiracy theory. I mean, this idea that there are fallen beings seeking to control us, many people say, oh, that's just another conspiracy theory that's completely crazy, it's completely out there. We don't even want to look at it. And that's deliberate tactic by the fallen beings, that they are trying to discredit the whole idea of a conspiracy so that people just give up on it. And that's why you have the many conflicting theories. They change all the time. And, you know, it's just deliberately done. So, of course, the problem with this whole scenario is how do you discern? I mean, how do you know what has some validity to it and what doesn't? Right? And that's precisely the point. They want to make it seem so confusing that even people who start looking into this end up being so confused they don't know what to believe. And just look at people. If you know people who have looked into conspiracy theories, you will see that many of them, at first it seems liberating, because now you understand something that most people don't understand. It makes you feel special. And it makes you feel like maybe you have some control over your life because you understand this. But as people go deeper and deeper into it, they usually ended up being so confused and so frustrated. And many of them end up becoming angry. And the reason for this is that it's a really, really delicate balance to find here, where on the one hand you recognize that there is something going on. On the other hand, you are not using it to scapegoat. So what I have said many times is that many people, when they first find the spiritual path, they are looking for an outer teaching, and they log into what I call the outer path, where you think that a guru, for example, is going to do something for you. And this is because they haven't yet taken fully responsibility for themselves. And when people haven't taken full responsibility for themselves, they also become open to conspiracy theories. Because what is the essence of a conspiracy theory? It is that your situation is not your fault. There is a secret conspiracy that's controlling your society, and therefore you can't get ahead. That's the essence of most conspiracy theories. So so many people, they feel frustrated with their lives. They can't understand why. For example, many people in America who are working class people, jobs have been exported to China. They feel like they can't get ahead. They can't make a decent living. They don't understand why. They are frustrated. So they become open to some kind of conspiracy theory. Because, number one, it gives them an outlet for their anger, their frustration. They can now direct it at somebody. Whether it's this group of people or even some nondescript group of people. They have a scapegoat. It takes some of their frustration away. But as I said, usually the more they go into it, they realize that a conspiracy theory, it doesn't give you any way to do anything about it. So at some point the frustration takes over again, they become more and more angry. But the other thing that a conspiracy theory does is it gives you an excuse for not taking responsibility for yourself, your own life, your own growth, your own state of mind. And so on the spiritual path, the most important turning point you come to is where you say, you don't say, but you accept a very simple thing. That is, everything in your life revolves around your life experience. Right now, you're looking at life. And you are experiencing life. Everything in your life is an experience inside your mind. And the turning point in the spiritual path where you realize that experience inside your mind does not depend on outer conditions. It can be triggered by outer conditions, but it isn't determined by them. Because you have the potential to take command over your life experience by taking command over your state of mind, resolving all these subconscious selves that I always talk about. So this is the turning point on the spiritual path, where you realize you can take command over your life experience. And as a part of walking the spiritual path, you are also seeking to expand your understanding of how the world works. This is essentially, it's part of how, let's say there's an alpha and omega aspect of taking command over your own state of mind. One is understanding the psychology, that's the omega aspect. The other is understanding how the world actually works. And as I explained in my video about how the world was created, there are currently on planet Earth, because it's an unnatural planet, there are these fallen beings who are seeking to deceive and control us. And there's a point on the spiritual path, after you've taken responsibility for yourself, you can understand fallen beings, and you benefit from that because it helps you understand what you see on Earth, all the evil that you see going on Earth. It helps you understand that. But when you have taken responsibility for yourself, you are not using this to scapegoat. This is the important distinction. I have seen in spiritual movements that when people learn about fallen beings, they can, in the beginning, use it to scapegoat. But when you really take responsibility for yourself, you're not using it to scapegoat. You're using it to help your understanding of what's going on, so that you adjust your expectations of what's happening on life, on Earth, and you realize that there are certain things that are not easy to change, and that will take some time to change. When I was young, for example, I had the unrealistic expectation that many world problems would go away if I just invoked enough spiritual light from the Ascended Masters. Before that, in meditation movement, if I just meditated enough, it would automatically remove these problems. But it was only when I learned about fallen beings that I realized it's going to take a lot longer. But that there are things we can do. And that's the thing. When you take responsibility for yourself, you're not scapegoating. You realize there are things you can do about these fallen beings. And I've talked about that in several other videos, but basically it is. In fact, I have a video in my How the World Works playlist about what spiritual people can do to change the world. And it basically is you can educate yourself. You can, if it's in your divine plan, you can expose what's going on. But you can also make these calls to the Ascended Masters for the judgment of Christ upon these fallen beings so they can be taken away from here. But the equation of free will is that if there are too many people on Earth who are blindly following these fallen beings, they can't necessarily be taken until people have seen what they need to see. So there's a certain equation there, but still, when you begin to understand that equation, you shift your outlook on life and you realize that the situation on Earth is very complicated. This is part of what conspiracy theories often do. They make it seem like there's an easy solution because there's this evil conspiracy, and if we just get rid of those bad people, whether it's the Jews or liberals or this or that, then we'll solve all our problems. But you realize it's a much more complex equation because it involves free will. And it involves that, and basically the mechanism is that most people on Earth have not been willing to take responsibility for themselves, and therefore they are looking for these strong leaders, and they want to blindly follow a strong leader. And that's the equation that is beginning to shift, where more and more people are waking up from this, and that's what simply needs to be accelerated, and we can play a part in accelerating that, so that it gradually comes to a tipping point where people will no longer blindly follow these leaders. And that's actually what you are seeing, and I have a playlist where I talk about the coming 12-year cycle as an unprecedented opportunity for spiritual growth. And what I'm saying in there is that the Ascended Masters have decided to release more spiritual light than normal, and this will cause people to become more and more extreme. This means some of these fallen beings who are leaders, they will become more and more extreme, and therefore it will become easier for people to see that this is unbalanced, that this is too far, that this is, basically self-destructive, you could say. And as more and more people see this, then some of these fallen beings will be taken off the planet, and therefore the conspiracy, the real conspiracy behind all the theories, is going to be diminished in power and will have less influence on society.